I'm delighted to be invited to do a talk with the Sanctuary on the 18th of February in St. Lawrence's in TU Dublin, Grange Gorman, Dublin. And the talk is going to be about trauma and how people experience trauma, what might happen to them having experienced trauma, understanding what happened, and maybe looking at ways people can overcome some of the ways that have begun to live their lives as a result of experiencing trauma. One of the focuses of the talk is on how people experience trauma normally and how to respond to trauma normally. And then if trauma isn't responded to in the normal way we might go about that, what that might do for us in terms of its effect on our body, its effect on our mind, on our relationships, and the way that we live our lives. In the first part of the talk, we'll be giving some information on this and some ideas on this. And the last part of the talk will be really linking into people who've gone on to the talk and talking to them about the particular aspects of trauma that they might be interested in, and also about the aspects of trauma that people might see themselves as overcoming and going into a healing relationship with the trauma. The reason why this talk is, I suppose, relevant for me, and perhaps relevant to the Sanctuary as well, is that trauma, first off, is not necessarily that well understood. People sometimes think of trauma as something basic like an accident, a hit, something nasty that happens to them, and they don't necessarily realize that trauma becomes an ongoing process and something that impacts on somebody's lives. It's also often a taboo subject. People don't really want to talk about it for lots of reasons. One, because as a result of the trauma, some of the behaviors that people exhibit, some of the ways that people relate to others as a result of the trauma is quite challenging and often, in some cases, frowned upon as well. So it's kind of a taboo subject. I've been working in the area of trauma now, specifically in the area of trauma for about 10 years, not just in the area of mental health, but you know, across the board per se, in particular in connection with how people relate to others and how people relate to living in the world and to living in different systems, and how initial trauma or process of trauma might affect the way we behave or the way that we relate to others. And this has kind of led me more and more into the area of, I suppose, looking at trauma as it impacts upon the body. And in particular, how we can reauthor our lives, or maybe begin to look at our lives differently and change our lives once we understand how trauma has affected our lives. And to some extent, reconnect or create a more healing story for ourselves once we've understood how trauma has affected us, and also began to look at ways that we can overcome trauma in order to change how we live our lives. I'm looking forward to the talk. Anybody's invited. It's a public talk. It will have quite a lot of room for interacting during the talk itself, but in particular in the kind of the final third of the talk, we really want to try and engage with people around their understandings, around maybe some of the things that come up for them in relation to trauma, and just have a couple of, you know, I suppose a dialogue around it, and to create this kind of wider understanding of how trauma affects our lives and how we can change particularly negative impacts upon our lives. So I hope you come along. Look forward to seeing you on the evening if you do, and if not, in the future, in association with the Sanctuary as well, we do have 2-day workshops coming up on this particular topic as well, and again on understanding on how to renegotiate our experience of trauma. So hopefully see you in the evening. See ya.